My family has started avoiding me and meeting at family events without me. I found out it's all because of my boyfriend, who cheated on me, and my parents were hiding it. I don't know when things started to change, but I think I first noticed it last spring. My name's Alex. I'm 35, and, until recently, I thought my family and I were pretty close. We'd always had our ups and downs. What family doesn't? But overall, we celebrated birthdays together, texted in our group chat almost daily, and kept each other in the loop about big and small things. Or so I thought. It started with this vague feeling, like I wasn't quite in the loop anymore. It was nothing concrete at first, just little things. My sister Emma would mention something about a dinner or outing, and I'd realize I hadn't heard about it beforehand. Or my mom would reference a conversation I hadn't been a part of, brushing it off as, "Oh, I must have forgotten to tell you." I didn't think much of it at first. People are busy, right? Mistakes happen. Then it got weirder. I texted the family group chat one Friday evening to ask if anyone wanted to grab dinner that weekend. No one replied. Not even a thumbs-up emoji, which was uncharacteristic. When I checked back a few hours later, I saw that everyone had been active. My sister's last seen was only a minute ago, but still, no response to my message. It hurt, but I didn't want to overreact. Maybe they were busy, or maybe I'd been too pushy. I told myself not to read too much into it. A week later, I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw something that made my stomach drop. My cousin Jessica had posted a story, a picture of a big family dinner at my parents' house. Everyone was there. My parents, my sister Emma and her boyfriend, my brother Noah and his wife, even my uncle Rick, who usually avoided these things like the plague. Everyone, except me. I stared at the picture for a long time, hoping I was imagining things. But there it was. My entire family laughing together around the dining table, a feast laid out before them. And no one had mentioned it to me. Not a word. Trying to stay calm, I texted Emma, "Hey, was there a family dinner tonight? I just saw Jessica's story." It took her a while to reply. When she finally did, all she said was, "Oh, yeah. It was kind of last minute. Sorry, thought someone told you." I didn't believe her. How does a last-minute dinner involve nearly the entire extended family? But I let it go for now. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing more and more instances of being excluded. The family group chat, which used to be so lively, became dead silent whenever I tried to contribute. Yet, I'd overhear my mom or dad referencing plans I hadn't been told about, clearly made through other means. One night, after another silent dinner at my parents' house, I borrowed my dad's iPad to check the weather. I wasn't snooping, at least, not intentionally. But when I opened messages, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A group chat titled, "Family, No Alex?" The last message was from my sister, just a few hours earlier. It read, "Don't forget, Alex doesn't know about Saturday. Let's keep it that way." My hands started shaking. I scrolled up, skimming through weeks' worth of messages. There were plans for dinners, outings, even a weekend trip to the mountains, all without me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My family, the people I loved and trusted most, had gone out of their way to exclude me from their lives. And they weren't even trying to hide it anymore. I confronted Emma first. She was always the most outspoken and blunt of the family, so I figured she'd give me a straight answer. I called her the next morning, my voice shaking with anger. "Emma, what the hell is going on? I saw the group chat. Family, no Alex? Are you seriously all conspiring to leave me out of everything?" Her response was infuriating. "Alex, you're overreacting. It's not what you think. Then what is it?" I snapped. "Because it sure looks like you've all decided I don't belong in this family anymore." She hesitated. "It's just, sometimes, you can be a bit much. It's easier this way." "A bit much?" I repeated, stunned. "What does that even mean?" She sighed. "You're sensitive, Alex. You take things too personally. It's not like we're trying to hurt you. We need some space sometimes." Space? From what? I couldn't wrap my head around it. If I'd done something to upset them, why hadn't they just told me? Why go behind my back like this? I didn't stop there. I called my parents, my brother, even my cousin Jessica. Every conversation followed the same frustrating pattern. Vague excuses, deflection, and a refusal to take responsibility. My mom even tried to guilt-trip me, saying, "You know we love you, Alex. You're imagining things." But I wasn't imagining it. The evidence was right there in black and white. And the more I pushed for answers, the more they pulled away. It was a sunny Sunday morning when my mom texted me, out of the blue, about a family brunch. "Come over at 11. Everyone's coming," the message read. It was unusual for her to send such a last-minute invite, especially after the months of feeling pushed aside. For a moment, I wondered if this was their way of making amends. Maybe they'd realized how cold they'd been and were finally ready to include me again. I arrived early, hoping to have a moment alone with my parents before the others got there. My mom, Karen, was in the kitchen, whisking eggs while bacon sizzled in the pan. She glanced at me when I walked in, her smile a little too tight. "Hey, Alex. You're here early," she said, her tone forced. "I figured I'd help out," I replied, leaning against the counter. "Thanks for inviting me. It's been a while since we've all been together." Her smile faltered. "Oh, well, you know how busy everyone is these days. Hard to coordinate schedules." I didn't push it. My dad, Richard, wandered in a few minutes later, muttering something about fixing the porch swing. He barely acknowledged me before heading outside. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. By the time the others arrived, the house was buzzing with noise. Emma and her boyfriend, Derek, walked in arm, laughing at some inside joke. My brother, Noah, and his wife, Rachel, followed with their twin boys, who immediately started racing around the living room. Even my cousin Jessica was there, chatting animatedly with Uncle Rick, who, true to form, was already complaining about the traffic. I watched as everyone greeted each other with hugs and laughter. When they finally noticed me standing there, the energy shifted. Emma gave me a quick, almost reluctant hug. Noah nodded at me but avoided eye contact. Jessica smiled briefly before turning back to Rick. It was as if my presence had sucked all the warmth out of the room. Brunch was set up buffet style, with everyone piling their plates high and settling around the long dining table. I ended up wedged between Rachel and Rick, who spent most of the meal engrossed in a debate about real estate prices. The tension in the room was unbearable, and no one made an effort to include me in their conversations. About halfway through the meal, I couldn't take it anymore. I set down my fork and cleared my throat. "So," I began, trying to keep my voice steady, "are we going to talk about the elephant in the room?" The chatter stopped. All eyes turned to me. Emma rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath, but I pressed on. "I know about the group chat," I said, my voice louder now. "The one where you all talk about plans and specifically make sure I'm not included. I know about the dinners, the trips, all of it. So can someone please explain what I did to deserve this?" My mom set down her coffee cup with a clatter. "Alex, this isn't the time or place for this." "Then when is the time, Mom?" "Because I've been waiting for months, and no one has given me a straight answer." Emma sighed dramatically. "You're being so paranoid, Alex. It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" I shot back, my frustration boiling over. "Because it sure feels like you've all decided I'm not part of this family anymore." Noah finally spoke up, his tone clipped. "Alex, we're not trying to exclude you. Sometimes it's just easier to organize things without involving everyone." "Everyone?" I repeated, incredulous. "Or just me? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've all gone out of your way to cut me out." Rachel shifted uncomfortably beside me. "Alex, maybe this isn't the best time." "No," I interrupted. "I want answers. I deserve answers." There was a long, awkward silence. Finally, my dad, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, spoke. "Alex, you need to understand that sometimes your intensity can be hard for people to deal with." "Intensity?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "What does that even mean?" "It means," Emma chimed in, "that you're exhausting to be around. You always make everything about you. You can't take a joke. You overreact to everything." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "So instead of talking to me about it, you all decided to cut me off? To create a secret chat behind my back?" Jessica finally spoke up, her voice soft. "Alex, it wasn't supposed to be like this. It just got out of hand." "Got out of hand?" I laughed bitterly. "Did Do you even hear yourselves? You've all been treating me like some kind of pariah, and now you're acting like I'm the problem? The room fell silent again. No one met my eyes. My mom got up and started clearing plates, clearly done with the conversation. Noah muttered something about taking the boys outside. One by one, they all found excuses to leave the table until I was sitting there alone. I stayed there for a while, staring at the half-eaten food on my plate, trying to process what had just happened. The people I had spent my entire life loving and trusting had turned against me, and not one of them was willing to take responsibility for it. They had their reasons, sure, but none of them made sense to me. None of them justified the betrayal. When I finally got up to leave, my mom stopped me at the door. "Alex," she said quietly, "we do love you. We're just trying to figure things out." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I walked out of the house without looking back, the sound of their laughter echoing behind me as they moved on without me, like nothing had happened. I don't know where to go from here. All I know is that the people I thought I could count on the most have made it clear that I'm not welcome in their lives anymore. And I still don't understand why. After the disastrous brunch, I couldn't let it go. The evasive answers, the shifting blame, none of it added up. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, picking apart every word, every expression. Something wasn't right, and I was determined to figure out what it was. The first clue came 2 days later, when I was scrolling through old photos on my phone. I hadn't looked at pictures of Nick in a while, not since the breakup, but as I went through the timeline, I realized something strange. The dates didn't line up. I'd always thought Nick and I ended things because we grew apart, as he'd put it. But there was a picture of us at my cousin Jessica's birthday party, smiling, arms around each other, just 2 weeks before he ended things. We hadn't been distant or unhappy. In fact, things had felt normal. Maybe even good. So why had Nick suddenly decided it was over? That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to the breakup. It had been abrupt, so abrupt that I'd been blindsided. Nick had come home one evening, sat me down and said, "I think we need to end this." He'd been calm, almost rehearsed. At the time, I thought he was just trying to spare my feelings. Now, I wasn't so sure. The next morning, I decided to dig deeper. I started by reaching out to Nick's best friend, Caleb. Caleb and I had always gotten along, but we hadn't spoken since the breakup. I sent him a message, asking if we could meet up. To my surprise, he agreed. When we met at a coffee shop later that day, Caleb seemed nervous. He fidgeted with his cup, avoiding my eyes. "So, what's this about?" he asked, forcing a smile. "I need to know what really happened between Nick and me," I said. "Did he ever tell you why he ended things?" Caleb hesitated. "Alex, I don't think I should." "Please," I interrupted. "I just want the truth." He sighed, looking genuinely uncomfortable. "Nick didn't want to tell you because he thought it would hurt you too much. But there was someone else." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Someone else? He cheated on me?" Caleb nodded reluctantly. "It wasn't serious. Just a fling. But he felt guilty, and I think he panicked. That's why he broke up with you." I sat there in stunned silence, the pieces falling into place. But there was still something missing. Why didn't he tell me? Why lie about it? Caleb looked away. "I think your family had something to do with that." My heart sank. "What do you mean?" He hesitated again, clearly torn. "Look, I don't know all the details, but I overheard Nick talking to your mom once. She told him it would be better if he didn't tell you. Said it would save everyone a lot of pain." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own family had been involved in covering up Nick's infidelity? It didn't make sense. Why would they do that? I thanked Caleb and left, my mind racing with questions. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to stop until I got them. The next step was confronting my mom. I showed up at my parents' house unannounced, catching her off guard as she was folding laundry. "We need to talk," I said, my voice shaking. She looked up, startled. "Alex, what's wrong?" "I know about Nick," I said bluntly. "I know he cheated on me. And I know you told him not to tell me." Her face went pale. "Who told you that? Does it matter?" I snapped. "Is it true?" She hesitated, and that was all the confirmation I needed. "It was for your own good," she said finally. "You were so happy with him, and I didn't want you to get hurt." So you decided to lie to me instead? I shouted. To let me believe that I was the problem, that I did something wrong? She flinched at my tone. It wasn't like that, Alex. We were just trying to protect you. We, I repeated, my voice rising. Who else was involved? She looked away, refusing to answer. Furious, I stormed out of the house, determined to get to the bottom of this. Over the next few days, I started piecing together the truth. I called Emma, Noah, even Uncle Rick. At first, they all denied knowing anything, but as I pressed them, their stories started to unravel. Eventually, Emma cracked. Fine, she admitted during a heated phone call. We knew about Nick's affair. Mom told us after it happened, and none of you thought I deserved to know? I demanded. We didn't want to get involved, she said defensively. It wasn't our place. Your place. I repeated, incredulous. You're my sister. How could you not tell me? She didn't have an answer. None of them did. They'd all known the truth, and they'd all decided to keep it from me. Even Jessica, who I'd always thought was on my side, admitted that she'd been aware of the affair. I thought it was for the best, she said when I confronted her. Nick didn't want to tell you, and your mom convinced us that it was better this way. The more I learned, the angrier I became. Not just at Nick, but at my entire family. They had betrayed me in the worst way, choosing to protect him instead of me. And for what? To avoid an uncomfortable conversation? To spare themselves the drama? I decided to confront Nick directly. I hadn't spoken to him since the breakup, but I tracked him down through mutual friends. When I finally got him on the phone, he sounded surprised and nervous. Alex, he said cautiously, what's going on? I know about the affair, I said coldly, and I know my family helped you cover it up. There was a long silence. I didn't want you to find out like this, he said finally. Then how did you want me to find out? I snapped. Or were you just planning to let me live with the lie forever? I was trying to protect you, he said weakly. Protect me? I repeated, my voice shaking with anger. Do you have any idea what this has done to me? I spent months blaming myself, thinking I wasn't enough, because you and my family couldn't be honest with me. He didn't have an answer. And honestly, I didn't expect him to. After everything I'd uncovered, I couldn't shake the anger burning inside me. Every new piece of information had deepened the wound. But there was one question I still didn't have an answer to. Why? Why would my own mother, Sarah, choose to side with Nick, a man who had betrayed me, instead of standing by her own son? I couldn't move forward without understanding her motivations. So, one evening, I went to her house, determined to get the answers I needed. When she opened the door, she looked tired, older, somehow, like the weight of everything had been dragging her down too. But I didn't let that soften me. We need to talk, I said. She hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside to let me in. We sat in the living room, the atmosphere heavy with tension. She fiddled with the edge of her cardigan, avoiding my eyes. Finally, I broke the silence. Why did you do it? I asked, my voice low but steady. Why would you help Nick cover up what he did? Why would you lie to me? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she sighed, leaning back in her chair. I thought I was protecting you. Protecting me? I repeated, my anger flaring. How is lying to me and conspiring with Nick to hide his affair protecting me? Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I almost felt guilty. But then I remembered the months of pain and confusion I'd endured because of her choices. I didn't want you to go through what I went through, she said finally, her voice trembling. What are you talking about? I asked, my anger giving way to confusion. She took a deep breath, as if gathering the courage to tell me something she'd been holding on to for a long time. When I was your age, she began, I was engaged to a man named Daniel. I thought he was the love of my life. But then I found out he was cheating on me. It shattered me, Alex. I thought I'd never recover. I stared at her, stunned. She had never told me this before. What does that have to do with me? I asked. She wiped a tear from her cheek. When Nick came to me and admitted what he'd done, I saw so much of Daniel in him. The guilt, the regret. It brought everything back. I didn't want you to feel the same pain I felt. So I thought, if we could keep it from you, you'd be spared. Her words left me speechless. I tried to process what she was saying, but it didn't make sense. You thought lying to me would spare me pain? Do you have any idea how much worse it was not knowing the truth? How much I blamed myself? She looked down at her hands. I thought I was doing the right thing, she whispered. I thought it would be easier for you to move on if you didn't know. Easier? I said, my voice rising. You destroyed my trust, Mom. Not just in you, but in everyone else too. Emma, Noah, Jessica, they all went along with it because you convinced them it was for my own good. Do you know what that's done to me? I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, her voice breaking. I just wanted to protect you. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could see the guilt in her eyes, but it wasn't enough. I needed more. What about Nick? I asked. Why were you so willing to protect him? He's the one who cheated. Why didn't you hold him accountable? She hesitated, then said, because he reminded me of Daniel. When he came to me, he was so remorseful, so desperate to fix things. I thought if I helped him, he might become a better person. I shook my head in disbelief. So you chose to protect him over me? Your own son? No, she said quickly. It wasn't like that. I wasn't trying to choose sides. I didn't want to see you get hurt. Well, you failed, I said bitterly, because I've never been more hurt in my life. Over the next few days, her revelations consumed me. I couldn't stop thinking about the choices she had made, how her own trauma had clouded her judgment and led her to betray me. I started digging deeper, trying to understand the full extent of her involvement. That's when I found out she had been meeting with Nick regularly after the breakup. At first, I thought it was just to coordinate the cover-up, but when I confronted her again, she admitted the truth. I thought if I could help him, maybe he could change, she said. Maybe he could become the man you deserved. Her words made me sick. You were more focused on fixing him than on supporting me, I said. Do you even realize how twisted that is? She didn't answer. She just looked at me with tears in her eyes, as if that was supposed to make everything better, but it didn't. The more I uncovered, the worse it got. I found out she had convinced Emma and Noah to go along with the lie by framing it as an act of love. If we tell Alex the truth, she had told them, it will destroy him. This is the best way to help him move on. She had even roped Jessica into her plan, persuading her to delete any incriminating messages and avoid mentioning the affair at family gatherings. We're doing this for Alex, she had said. He doesn't need to know. But it wasn't for me. It was for her. She had taken her own pain and projected it onto me, making decisions on my behalf without ever considering how it would affect me. She had robbed me of my agency, my right to make my own choices, and in doing so, she had broken something between us that I wasn't sure could ever be repaired. By the time I confronted her for the final time, I was emotionally drained. You had no right to make those decisions for me, I said. No right to manipulate everyone around me and hide the truth. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. You're right, she said. I see that now. I was wrong. I let my own pain cloud my judgment, and I hurt you in ways I never intended. I'm so sorry, Alex. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope someday you can understand why I did what I did. I didn't know if I could ever understand or forgive her. All I knew was that the person I had trusted most in the world had betrayed me in the name of love, and that betrayal had left scars that would take a long time to heal. I felt like I was drowning. Every time I thought I'd reached the bottom of the betrayal, I'd uncover another layer that pulled me even deeper. My mother's excuses, my siblings' silence, and my family's complicity. All of it weighed on me like a boulder pressing down on my chest. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. My mind was stuck in a loop, replaying the lies and manipulations over and over again. One night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring blankly at the television. The sound was on, but I wasn't paying attention. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a message from Jessica. Hey, thinking of you. Hope you're okay. I didn't reply. I wasn't okay, and I didn't want their hollow attempts at comfort. None of them had been there for me when it mattered. Why should I let them in now? I tossed the phone aside and leaned back on the couch, my head throbbing. I couldn't keep living like this. I needed help. The next morning, I made the call. I found a therapist online, a woman named Dr. Morgan Reed. Her profile said she specialized in family dynamics and betrayal trauma, which seemed fitting. I didn't know what I expected from therapy, but I was desperate for something, anything, to help me make sense of the mess my life had become. The first session was harder than I expected. Dr. Reed's office was warm and inviting, with soft lighting and shelves lined with books and plants. She greeted me with a kind smile and gestured for me to sit on the couch. "So, Alex," she began, her voice calm and steady, "what brings you here today?" I hesitated, unsure of where to start. How do you sum up months of betrayal and pain in a single sentence? "Finally," I said, "I feel like my entire family has turned against me." Her expression didn't change, but I could see the empathy in her eyes. "Tell me more about that," she said. I told her everything. About the secret group chat, the lies about Nick, the way my mother had manipulated everyone into keeping me in the dark. As I spoke, the words came faster, spilling out in a torrent of anger and frustration. By the time I finished, I was shaking, my hands clenched into fists. Dr. Reed nodded thoughtfully. "It sounds like you've been through a lot," she said. "Betrayal, especially by those closest to us, can be incredibly painful. It's no wonder you're feeling overwhelmed." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I just don't understand how they could do this to me," I said. "They were supposed to be my family. They were supposed to have my back." She leaned forward slightly, her expression compassionate. "Betrayal often leaves us questioning everything we thought we knew about our relationships. It's okay to feel hurt, angry, even lost. Those are normal reactions to what you've experienced." Over the next few weeks, I started to unpack my feelings with Dr. Reed. She helped me understand that my mother's actions, while misguided, were rooted in her own unresolved trauma. That didn't excuse what she had done, but it helped me see that her choices weren't entirely about me. They were about her fear and pain. One session, I told Dr. Reed about a memory from my childhood. I was 8 years old, and I'd fallen off my bike, scraping my knee. My mom had rushed over, panicking, and insisted I couldn't ride again until I'd healed completely. At the time, I thought she was just being overprotective. Now, I realized it was part of a pattern. She had always tried to shield me from pain, even when it wasn't her place to do so. "That pattern can be difficult to break," Dr. Reed said. "Your mother likely believed she was protecting you, just as she did when you were a child. But in trying to shield you, she unintentionally caused more harm." "That's the thing," I said. "I don't want to be protected. I want to be treated like an adult, someone capable of handling the truth." Dr. Reed nodded. "And that's a valid need. Part of healing from this betrayal will be setting boundaries with your family, making it clear what you will and won't accept moving forward." While therapy was helping me process my emotions, it also stirred up a lot of memories I tried to bury. One night, after a particularly intense session, I dreamed about Nick for the first time in months. In the dream, we were at the beach, laughing and holding hands. But then he let go, walking away without a word. I called after him, but he didn't turn around. When I woke up, I felt hollow. Therapy had brought the pain of the breakup back to the surface, forcing me to confront feelings I'd been trying to avoid. I couldn't stop wondering if things would have been different if my family had told me the truth from the beginning. Would I have been able to forgive Nick? Would we still be together? Dr. Reed helped me see that those questions, while natural, weren't productive. "The past can't be changed," she said during one session. "What matters now is how you move forward. What do you need to feel whole again?" It was a question I didn't have an answer to. Not yet. As the weeks went on, I started to notice small changes in myself. I wasn't as consumed by anger. I still felt hurt and betrayed, but the emotions weren't as raw as they had been. Dr. Reed taught me techniques for managing my anxiety, like grounding exercises and mindfulness practices. They didn't erase the pain, but they made it more bearable. One day, after a particularly difficult session, Dr. Reed said something that stuck with me. "Healing isn't linear," she said. "There will be days when you feel like you're making progress, and days when it feels like you're back at square one. Both are part of the process." She was right. There were days when I felt strong, like I could face my family and set those boundaries she had talked about. But there were also days when I couldn't get out of bed, when the weight of everything felt too heavy to carry. On those days, I reminded myself that it was okay to feel that way. That healing would take time. One breakthrough came during a session where Dr. Reed asked me to write a letter to my family, not to send, but to express everything I needed to say. At first, I didn't know where to start, but once I began writing, the words flowed out of me like a dam had broken. I wrote about the pain they had caused me, the betrayal I felt, and the anger I still carried. But I also wrote about the love I still had for them, buried under all the hurt. When I finished, I read the letter aloud to Dr. Reed, my voice shaking with emotion. "Do you think you'll ever share this with them?" she asked when I was done. "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe someday, but not yet." She nodded. "That's okay. This is about your healing, not theirs." It had been months since I started therapy. I wasn't fixed by any means, but I was better. My therapist, Dr. Reed, had helped me untangle the mess of emotions and trauma caused by my family's betrayal. I had learned to set boundaries, focus on my own healing, and most importantly, demand honesty in all my relationships. That's why, when my sister Emma called and suggested we try family therapy, I didn't immediately say no, but I didn't say yes either. "Look," she said, her voice soft, almost pleading. "We all know we messed up, Mom especially, but we want to make things right. Family therapy might help us rebuild. If you're open to it." Her words hit a nerve. Deep down, I still loved my family, despite everything they had done. But love didn't erase the pain or fix the damage they had caused. "I'll think about it," I said finally. A week later, we had our first session. The therapist was a woman named Dr. Naomi Carter, a no-nonsense type with a firm but compassionate demeanor. The session was held in a neutral space, a warm, brightly lit office downtown that didn't feel too clinical. My parents, Sarah and Richard, sat on one couch. Emma and Noah, my brother, sat on the other. I chose a chair by myself, deliberately keeping my distance. Dr. Carter started by setting some ground rules. "This is a space for honesty and respect," she said. "We're here to listen to each other and work toward understanding. That doesn't mean we have to agree, but we do have to communicate openly." It sounded good in theory, but as the session began, I felt the same frustration bubbling up. My mother was the first to speak. "Alex, I know I've apologized before, but I want to say it again. I'm so sorry for the way I handled things. I was trying to protect you, but I see now that I only made things worse." Her words were familiar, ones I'd heard before. But this time, she looked me in the eye as she spoke, and for the first time, I saw the depth of her regret. "You didn't just make things worse," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You broke my trust. You decided what was best for me without ever asking how I felt. And you convinced everyone else to go along with it." My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "We didn't know how to handle the situation," he said. "But you're right, Alex. We should have been honest with you." I turned to Emma and Noah. "And what about you two? Why didn't you tell me the truth?" Emma looked down at her hands. "Mom convinced us it was for your own good," she said. "I didn't want to hurt you, and I guess I thought she knew what was best." Noah nodded. "Same here. I didn't want to get involved, but that was cowardly of me. I should have stood up for you." Their admissions were a small step, but they didn't erase the months of pain I'd endured. "I'm glad you're admitting it now," I said. "But if we're going to move forward, there can't be any more secrets. No more lies. If something happens, I deserve to know the truth, whether it's painful or not." The sessions continued weekly. Each time, we unpacked a new layer of the family dynamics that had led to the betrayal. I learned more about my mother's past, about how her trauma with Daniel had shaped her worldview. She talked about how she'd always felt the need to control situations to avoid pain, both for herself and for others. "I thought I was helping," she said during one session, "but I see now that I was taking away your agency. That wasn't fair to you." It was a hard pill to swallow, realizing that her intentions had been rooted in love, even if they were misguided. It didn't excuse what she had done, but it made it easier to start forgiving her. Emma and Noah also opened up about their struggles. "I think we relied on Mom too much," Emma admitted. "She's always been the one to fix things, and we let her take control instead of stepping up ourselves." Noah added, I regret not speaking up. I should have been there for you, Alex. I let my fear of confrontation get in the way, and I'm sorry. Hearing their apologies was bittersweet. On one hand, it felt good to hear them acknowledge their mistakes. But on the other hand, it didn't erase the pain they had caused. Forgiveness, I realized, would be a process, not a single moment. One of the most intense sessions came when Dr. Carter asked us to role-play a scenario where I was excluded from a family event. I want you to recreate the dynamics, she said, and then we'll work through how things could have been handled differently. At first, I resisted. I don't want to relive that, I said. It's too painful. I understand, Dr. Carter said gently, but sometimes, revisiting the past can help us change the future. Reluctantly, I agreed. My family acted out a hypothetical situation where they were planning a dinner without me. Watching them navigate the scenario brought all the old feelings rushing back. Anger, sadness, betrayal. But then Dr. Carter stopped them and turned to me. Alex, she said, how would you want them to handle this differently? I'd want them to include me, I said, or at least be honest about why I wasn't invited. Dr. Carter turned to my family. How can you make that happen? My mother spoke first. We need to stop making assumptions about what Alex can or can't handle, she said. From now on, we'll be honest with him, even if it's uncomfortable. Emma and Noah nodded in agreement. No more secrets, Emma said. You deserve better than that. Rebuilding trust with my family wasn't like flipping a switch. It was slow, uneven, and filled with moments where I wanted to give up. Even after our family therapy sessions ended, I still felt the sting of their betrayal. It wasn't something I could forget overnight, or maybe ever. But for the first time, there was a sense of effort on their part, an acknowledgement that what had happened couldn't simply be brushed under the rug. It started with small gestures. My sister Emma invited me out for coffee one afternoon, something we hadn't done in years. We met at a little cafe downtown, and at first, the conversation was awkward. She kept fiddling with her cup, starting sentences and then trailing off. Finally, she blurted out, I know I can't undo what I did, Alex, but I want to try to be a better sister to you. Her honesty caught me off guard. For so long, I'd felt like my family had been avoiding responsibility, hiding behind excuses. But this felt real. I appreciate that, I said cautiously, but it's going to take time. I know, she said, her voice soft, and I'm okay with that. I just want you to know I'm here. My mom, Sarah, also made an effort, though her approach was different. She started calling me regularly, not to lecture or pry, but just to check in. At first, I was suspicious of her intentions, wondering if she was trying to gloss over the past. But as the weeks went on, I realized she was genuinely trying to rebuild our relationship. One evening, she showed up at my apartment with a photo album. I found this in the attic, she said, holding it out to me. I thought it might be nice to look through it together. The album was filled with pictures from my childhood, birthday parties, vacations, school plays. As we flipped through the pages, she shared stories I'd forgotten or never known. For the first time in a long time, it felt like we were connecting, not as adversaries, but as mother and son. I know I've failed you in a lot of ways, she said as we reached the last page. But I want to do better, Alex. I want to earn your trust back. Her words meant a lot, but they didn't erase the hurt. It's not just about trust, Mom, I said. It's about respect. I need to feel like my voice matters, that I'm not being treated like a child. She nodded slowly. I understand, and I'll work on that. As the months went on, my family began to practice the openness we'd discussed in therapy. They included me in conversations and decisions, even when it was uncomfortable. For example, during a family dinner at my parents' house, my brother Noah brought up a disagreement he'd been having with his wife, Rachel. Normally, this would have been the kind of topic they avoided in front of me, but instead, Noah looked at me and said, "What do you think, Alex?" The question surprised me. For so long, I'd felt like an outsider, like my opinions didn't matter. But in that moment, I realized they were trying to change. "I think you need to listen to her," I said. "It sounds like she just wants to feel heard." Noah nodded thoughtfully. "You're probably right. Thanks." It was a small moment, but it felt significant. They were starting to treat me like an equal, not as someone who needed to be shielded or managed. Despite these steps forward, there were still setbacks. One evening, I found out through social media that Emma and Jessica had gone out for drinks without inviting me. My first instinct was to assume the worst, that they were slipping back into their old habits. But instead of stewing in silence, I decided to confront Emma directly. "Why didn't you tell me you and Jessica were going out?" I asked her over the phone. Her response surprised me. "Honestly, I didn't think you'd want to come. I know you're still upset with us, and I didn't want to pressure you." Her answer caught me off guard. It wasn't an excuse. It was an acknowledgement of the tension that still lingered between us. "I would have appreciated the invite," I said. "Even if I didn't come, it would have meant a lot to be included." "I get that," she said, "and I'm sorry. I'll do better next time." It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One of the biggest turning points came during a family game night, something we hadn't done in years. My mom had insisted on hosting it, saying it would be good for all of us to spend time together in a relaxed setting. At first, I was skeptical. I half expected it to devolve into awkward silences or veiled comments about the past. But to my surprise, it was fun. We played charades, laughed at my dad's terrible acting skills, and reminisced about old family traditions. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I belonged. At the end of the night, my mom pulled me aside. "You seem lighter," she said, her eyes searching mine. "Happier. I think I'm starting to forgive," I admitted. "It's not easy, but I'm trying." Her face lit up with relief. That's all I could ever ask for. Forgiveness, I learned, wasn't a single moment. It was a process, one that required patience and effort from both sides. My family still made mistakes. They were human, after all. But the difference now was that they owned up to them. They didn't hide behind excuses or try to sweep things under the rug. They faced the hard conversations, even when it was uncomfortable. And I did my part, too. I worked on letting go of the anger that had consumed me for so long. I reminded myself that forgiveness wasn't about condoning their actions. It was about freeing myself from the weight of resentment. One day, while visiting my parents, I noticed a framed photo on the mantel. It was a recent picture of the whole family: my parents, Emma, Noah, their kids, and me. I couldn't remember the last time we'd taken a family photo, and seeing it there felt like a symbol of how far we'd come. "Do you like it?" my mom asked, noticing me looking at it. I nodded. "Yeah, I do. It wasn't perfect. There were still cracks in our relationships, scars from what had happened. But we were working on it together. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future."